Okay. So today we're going deep on something pretty basic
Hmm.
to how we all learn and work
Yeah.
note-taking.
Yeah. Note taking is huge.
But this isn't, about finding the perfect pen or the best app.
Right.
We're diving into a real-world situation,
Okay.
a legal case where handwritten notes
Hmm?
weren't just some side detail. They were actually like a key piece of evidence.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
And for, anyone listening who really cares about, learning efficiently, making knowledge stick,
Yeah.
understanding the kind of hidden limits of note-taking,
Okay.
that can actually like really change how you process and remember information, whether
Mm.
you're in like a crucial meeting or just, diving into a new book.
Yeah. I mean, that's really where the rubber hits the road,
Yeah.
right? Like note taking is something we do all the time,
Mhm.
but we rarely stop to think about how it's actually working or maybe not working.
Right. And to help us, unpack this whole thing, we're going to look at the work of Kenneth Akira,
Okay.
who's an educational psychologist, and his research, focusing on how we take notes,
Yeah.
actually took this really fascinating turn when he ended up serving as an expert witness in a big legal case.
Wow. That's not something you hear every day.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It kind of highlights how these insights from, academic research can
Mhm.
have these surprisingly like powerful real-world impacts.
Totally. And it's a great example of how seemingly simple things like taking notes can become so much more complex when you look at them under a legal microscope.
Right. So our goal today is to pull out, the core insights from Kira's experience and his research-backed opinions
Okay.
about handwritten notes specifically.
Right.
We really want to understand why these seemingly straightforward records
Uh-huh.
might not always be as reliable as we tend to think they are.
I'm intrigued already.
Well, Kira actually presented three main opinions to the court,
Okay.
and we're going to use those as the anchors for our deep dive today.
Perfect. Good framework. So let's hear those three opinions.
All right, so opinion number one, and this is going to be a recurring theme. Okay. Handwritten notes are likely to omit a big chunk of what is actually said.
That makes sense intuitively.
Right. It might sound kind of obvious, if you've ever been in a fast-paced meeting,
Sure.
just like scribbling furiously trying to get everything down.
Oh, yeah.
Been there.
But Kira actually had like decades of research to back this up.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this isn't just like a hunch.
Not at all. So he pointed to some really foundational studies in this area. So, for example, back in 1925, there was this researcher named Crawford
Okay.
who looked at notes taken during presentations that contained like almost 5,000 different ideas.
Wow, 5,000. That's a lot.
Right. And what he found was people only recorded about 53% of those ideas.
Okay, so a little over half.
And even then, a lot of what they did write down was vague or not entirely accurate.
Interesting. So even when they captured something, it wasn't necessarily correct.
Exactly. And that was like almost a century ago, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if things have gotten any better.
Well, Kira also highlighted more recent research.
Like there's a 1974 study by Hartley and Marshall that found an even lower average note completeness.
Oh, wow.
Just 11%.
11%. That's like barely anything.
I know, it's tiny. And then another study by Locke in 1977 put the average around 52%.
Okay, so a bit higher, but still,
Still means almost half of the information is missing.
right? So for those of us listening, I guess this means even when we feel like we've taken good notes, we're still missing a lot.
Exactly. A lot of the original message is just gone.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty eye-opening.
And Kira's own research, over his whole career really hammered this home. So across 16 different experiments where he looked at note completeness in various situations,
Uh-huh.
live presentations, videos, audio recordings,
Okay, so a good mix.
he found that on average, handwritten notes captured only about 35% of the information presented.
35%. Man, we are not good at this, are we?
Not really. And in 14 of those 16 studies, it was actually less than 40%.
Okay, so consistently missing more than half.
Yeah, consistently. These numbers really highlight the idea that what ends up on the page is
Right.
just a fraction of what was actually communicated.
Okay, so big takeaway notes are incomplete.
Big takeaway. And, because this legal case we're talking about involved notes taken in a few different settings,
Like what?
there was a group seminar, a one-on-one meeting, and a phone call.
Okay, so a variety of situations.
Kira really dug into the research that looked at note-taking in each of those specific contexts.
Makes sense. So let's start with the group seminar setting.
Yeah, right.
What does the research suggest about how much information we typically capture in that kind of environment?
So in the legal case, one set of notes came from this potential investor
Yep.
who went to this roughly hour-long seminar that was led by the energy company's executive.
Okay.
There was a PowerPoint presentation. Print and handouts of the slides were provided.
Right.
They were showing geographic maps, and people were asking questions throughout.
So like a pretty typical, information-dense seminar.
Very typical. So Kira compared this to one of his own studies from 1987,
Okay.
where they looked at notes taken by adults during a live hour-long lecture. And the average note completeness in that study was 37%.
Okay, so right in line with that 35% average we talked about.
And he argued that this investor in the seminar, they probably had a pretty similar level of motivation to take good notes.
Right, because they're trying to make informed investment decisions.
Exactly, just like students, studying for an exam.
Totally. So right off the bat, we're talking about potentially 2/3 of the information presented, just not making it into the notes.
And he actually pointed out that several things
Yeah.
could have made the investor's notes in this particular seminar even less complete.
Really? Like what?
Well, for instance, research by Maddox and Houle back in 1975
Okay.
showed that people often just stop taking notes when they're looking at visual aids.
Oh, that's interesting.
So in this case, it was those geographic maps.
Right, it's like our brains can only handle so much input at once.
Exactly. And then having those PowerPoint handouts available, that might have made people feel less of a need to take super detailed notes.
Right, if they know they're getting the slides later.
There's research from Nuri and Shahiz in 2008 that supports that idea.
Okay.
And then there are all those questions being asked during the presentation.
Yeah, that can be distracting for sure.
And again, Maddox and Houle actually found that note-taking tends to decrease when other people are speaking or asking questions.
It's like our focus gets pulled in different directions.
Right. It's like we're trying to listen to the speaker and the questions and also write stuff down.
And something has to give.
And then here's another really interesting point.
Okay.
If this investor already knew a lot about, the energy industry or the specific topic being discussed, research suggests they actually might have taken even fewer notes.
Really? That seems counterintuitive.
I know. But the idea is that people who feel like they already know a lot about something, they might be overconfident in their ability to just remember it.
Oh, I see. So they're like, oh, I got this.
Exactly. And they don't bother writing it down. And there's some research from Bothan and Clough in 2012 that supports this idea.
Interesting. So when you consider all these factors at play in that seminar,
right,
the investor's notes could have been way less complete than even that 37% average.
Way less.
Wow. Okay, so seminars are already tough for note-taking, but then you add in all these other variables.
And it gets even worse.
It's a recipe for incomplete notes.
Exactly. So what about the face-to-face meeting?
Right. How did that compare?
Well, in a one-on-one setting, you generally have more control over the flow of information.
Sure, you can ask questions for clarification. You can ask them to repeat things.
Right. So Kira actually referenced a study he did back in 1991 where people were learning from a video presentation, but they had the ability to, control the pace.
So they could rewind, pause, fast forward as needed.
Exactly. So, they had plenty of time to really process and note the information.
Sounds like a pretty ideal note-taking situation.
Right. But even in that super controlled environment, they still only recorded about 64% of the presented material.
64%.
Yeah.
So still over a third missing, even with all that control.
Even with all that control.
That's kind of wild.
And then when you go from, this controlled educational setting to the real world messiness of a real business meeting,
right,
it gets even worse.
Oh, no.
There's this 2012 study by Bothing and Clough where they found that people in typical 30-minute meetings, they recorded an average of just 14 notes.
14 notes total.
Total. And each note captured about 8 seconds of material.
Wow. So they're only actually taking notes for a tiny fraction of the meeting.
Tiny. And that translates to note-taking happening for only about 7% of the total meeting time.
7%. Man, that is bleak.
And then there's a 1992 survey by Kahn that basically confirmed widespread incompleteness of meeting notes across different professions.
So it's not just business meetings. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So chances are this investor in the face-to-face meeting,
probably ended up with some pretty incomplete notes as well.
Makes sense. So we've got seminars, face-to-face meetings. What about the phone call?
Right. So in a phone call, you don't have visual distractions like slides or maps.
Sure.
And you don't have to worry about making eye contact.
Right. So theoretically, you could focus more on your notes.
Right. Kira looked at some of his own research on this.
Okay.
Note-taking during audio presentations. And one study showed people recording around 36%. of what they heard.
All right, so still pretty low.
But another one found they only captured about 29% of the specific details
Oh, wow.
and only like 15% of the overall organization of the presentation.
15% for the organization. That's rough.
It's rough. So even when it's just audio, significant omissions are still happening.
Right, so it seems like no matter the format, handwritten notes are just not great at capturing everything.
They're not. And that actually brings us to Kira's second core opinion.
Okay, hit me with it.
This one is that notes tend to omit
Crucial details, the surrounding context, and these like essential qualifying words or phrases.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just that we miss information in general.
Right.
It's that the specific things we miss can really change how we understand what was said.
Exactly. So let's break this down a bit.
Let's do it.
When it comes to details,
Yeah.
Kira and Bentham did this study back in 1988, and they made this really clear distinction between recording like the main ideas
Right.
and capturing all the supporting information.
Okay, that makes sense.
They found that people were pretty good at getting the main ideas down, like around 63%,
Okay.
but they only captured about 33% of all the information.
Meaning a lot of those important details got left out.
A lot. And they had this great example in their study.
Okay, I like examples.
So someone might write down, learning hierarchies deal only with intellectual skills.
All right, seems like a clear statement.
But they might miss this crucial detail that intellectual skills consist of rules and concepts.
Oh, I see. So without that second part, you don't really understand what intellectual skills even are.
Right, you're missing that key definition.
So you get the what, but not the how.
Exactly. And then there's this other study by Kira in 1987
Okay.
where they looked at different levels of ideas. So from the main idea down to like supporting examples and details.
Okay.
And they found that as information got more detailed, the rate of note-taking just like fell off a cliff.
Oh, wow.
People captured like 91% of those top-level main ideas,
Okay.
but only about 11% of the most detailed like level 4 ideas.
11%, that is a steep drop.
Super steep. It really shows how we tend to focus on the big picture and just neglect those supporting details.
Like we're getting the headlines, but not the full story.
Exactly. And this isn't just, you know, a lecture hall phenomenon.
Oh, really?
Research on notes taken during business meetings also points to a big lack of detail.
Huh, interesting.
So you've got Kahn's 1992 survey, a 2005 study by Whitaker and colleagues, Bothan and Clough's 2012 study, all showing the same pattern.
Interesting. So even when we're trying to capture important information in a work setting, we still skimp on the details.
You do. And Bothan and Clough actually found that even when important meeting points were noted, it only happened a little over half the time.
Oh, wow. So even the important stuff is getting missed.
And there was very little agreement between different note takers on like the specific details that they did record.
So it's not just about what we miss, it's also about how differently we might interpret and record even the same information.
Exactly. And they found only about 8% consensus on the details.
8%, that's incredibly low.
It's tiny, which really, you know, highlights how subjective and incomplete our individual notes can be.
Right. So what I write down might be completely different from what you write down, even if we're at the same meeting.
Exactly. And this was directly relevant to the legal case.
Okay. So
for example, one investor might have just jotted down great potential to deliver oil, but they didn't include any details about like how much potential based on what data or even whose assessment it was.
So it's a very vague statement that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways.
A lot of ways. And without those supporting details, it's really misleading.
Like a headline with no article.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the problem of omitted context.
Right, because the meaning of a statement can completely change depending on the context.
Totally. So a 2004 study by Kira and Titsworth found that people only recorded about 15% of the contextual details.
15%? We are not good at this, are we?
Nope. And they give a good example.
Hit me.
Someone might write down, self-disclosure is at the core of relationship development, which is a true statement.
Yeah.
But they might leave out the fact that that's a core assumption within social penetration theory.
Right. So without that theoretical context, the statement loses a lot of its meaning.
It becomes just like a general observation.
Instead of a specific element within a larger framework.
Exactly. And in the legal case, this missing context was crucial.
Okay, so how did that play out?
Well, for example, an investor might have noted down great potential, but didn't specify if that was like the speaker's personal opinion,
Right.
or a widely accepted industry estimate,
Okay.
or even just a hypothetical possibility.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Huge difference. And similarly, notes might have mentioned increases in the company's stock price, but left out the fact that this was all contingent on them reaching a certain level of oil production.
So leaving out those crucial conditions.
Crucial. And then there's another example.
Okay.
The price of oil in the ground might have been noted down without mentioning that this was being discussed in the context of like a purely hypothetical best case scenario.
So what sounds like a factual statement is actually based on a lot of assumptions.
Exactly. And all of these omissions, they can completely change the meaning and the intended significance of what was originally said.
Right. So basically context is king, but our notes often don't capture it.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about missing details and missing context. What about those essential qualifying words and phrases?
Right. So this is where, those seemingly small but super important words just kind of disappear from our notes. And Maddox and Hoole's 1975 study gave some good examples of this.
Like what?
So Western coastal areas might get shortened to just coastal areas.
Okay.
Or malaria influences the distribution of population in South Vietnam. Gets written down as malaria influences the distribution of population.
Wow, that little South Vietnam qualifier makes a big difference.
Huge difference. And then Schneider did a study in 2001 looking at notes taken during like managerial interviews. And he found that a lot of hedging language just got omitted.
Interesting. So like what kind of hedging language?
So for example, I would think she does good work.
Okay.
Might get written down as just she thinks she does good work.
Oh, I see. So it goes from being an opinion or a belief to like a statement of fact.
Exactly. And it makes the claim much stronger.
Right, because you're losing that element of uncertainty.
And in the energy company case, this was a big deal.
In what way?
So there was an example where the investor's notes mentioned a 2 billion barrel potential for an oil field.
Okay.
But they left out these crucial qualifiers that this estimate was only possible with like a very high recovery rate.
Right.
And that this figure actually came from a third-party report.
So it wasn't even the company's own assessment?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
So a potentially speculative estimate with all these conditions attached ends up looking like a definitive statement of potential.
Wow, that's a big distortion.
Big distortion. Just because those qualifiers got left out.
So those little words make a huge difference.
They do. And that brings us to Kira's third and final opinion.
Okay, let's hear it.
This is that notes often contain inaccurate or vague statements.
So now we're not just talking about what's missing, but what's actually wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this really speaks to the limitations of human memory.
Right, and the challenges of trying to like transcribe things in real time.
Exactly. So going back to Crawford's 1925 study, he found that only about 53% of what people wrote down was actually completely correct.
Okay, so a little over half.
But a big chunk of it, like 45%, was vague.
Meaning it lacked clarity or precision?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
then 2% was just plain inaccurate.
Interesting. So even when we're trying our best, there's a good chance we're introducing errors.
A good chance. And the 1975 study by Maddox and Hoole found that 61% of note takers made errors.
61%. That's a lot.
It's a lot. And these errors often involve numbers.
Which makes sense. Numbers are easy to mix up when you're writing quickly.
Totally. And then a 1994 study by Johnstone and Sue supported those findings, showing that inaccuracies were especially common when people were copying things like diagrams, numerical figures, and equations.
Makes sense. Those can be tricky to get down accurately.
And this was especially relevant to the energy company case, because every single handwritten note that the government agency was using as evidence, every single one contained numerical figures that were supposedly presented by the executive.
So the very information that was at the heart of the dispute
was also the type of information that's most likely to be recorded inaccurately.
Wow, that's kind of ironic, isn't it?
It is.
So what happened with the case?
Well, it actually got settled out of court before it went to trial.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is that Kira's research and his expert report were reviewed by both the prosecution and the judge.
So even though it didn't go to trial, his work still might have influenced the outcome.
Exactly.
That's a great example of how this kind of academic research can have real-world impact.
And Kira himself has actually called for more research on note-taking in these real-world, non-academic settings.
Like what kind of settings?
like business meetings, courtrooms, counseling sessions, medical consultations.
Right, because those were all situations where accurate notes are really important.
Crucial. And he pointed out that there's not a lot of research in those areas yet.
Interesting. So we need more studies to understand how note-taking works in those contexts.
Exactly. And he also emphasized this point,
Right.
that even with all the research that's been done,
Uh-huh.
the basic challenges of note completeness and accuracy,
Yeah.
they haven't really improved much since Crawford's initial work way back in 1925.
So we're still making the same mistakes almost 100 years later.
Pretty much. It's kind of humbling.
It is. It makes you realize that even with all our technology and knowledge, we're still limited by these very human factors.
Exactly. So Kira did touch on some research about how to improve note-taking.
Like what?
So things like providing students with complete notes,
Yeah.
using structured note-taking frameworks,
Mm-hmm.
incorporating organizational cues during presentations,
Yeah.
even just like pausing more during lectures.
Interesting. So giving people more time to process and write things down.
Exactly. But he also stressed that we really need to find solutions for situations.
Yeah.
Mm,
Where that kind of support isn't built in.
right. Because in the real world, we don't always have those advantages.
Right. So as we wrap this up, let's
Right.
bring it back to you, the listener.
Right. Why should anyone care about all this?
Exactly. So what are the big takeaways from this whole, note-taking under scrutiny thing?
Well, the main message here is that handwritten notes,
Yeah.
they're super common,
Uh-huh.
but they're also frequently incomplete.
Right.
They often lack crucial details, important context. They tend to omit important qualifiers.
Yeah.
And they can even just be plain wrong.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember this isn't necessarily a reflection of your note-taking skills.
Right.
It's more about the inherent limitations of the process itself.
Exactly. So like the next time you're looking at your own meeting notes
Yeah.
or trying to make sense of someone else's,
Mm.
or even when you're really diligently trying to capture everything in real time,
Right.
just keep in mind that your notes
Yeah.
and everyone else's are likely just a partial snapshot. Exactly. We're only getting a piece of the puzzle.
And that actually leads to a really important question.
Shoot.
Given all these limitations of handwritten notes,
Yeah.
how can we be more strategic about how we capture and share information
Right.
in, all these different professional and learning environments
Mm.
so that we can get closer to that, accurate and complete understanding?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is.
Because we're so reliant on notes, but they're clearly not perfect.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So are there other methods, maybe using technology or collaborating more effectively,
Yeah.
that could help us overcome some of these challenges?
It's definitely something to think about.
It is. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. So let us know what strategies you use to make sure you're capturing and understanding information effectively.
Yeah, because clearly we need to go beyond just relying on our handwritten notes.
We do. And that's something we can all work on together.
Absolutely.